So we live in a performance-obsessed culture, certainly in the West, and so it makes perfect sense. If that's the culture, that's the water we're swimming in. So then when I go do the thing that I love doing or that I'm quote unquote good at or I've identified with, my entire identity is at stake.
On this episode of the Psychology Podcast, it was great chatting with my buddy Michael Gervais. Michael is one of the world's foremost sports psychologists. It was great fun to riff with Michael, which we did live in his studio. In this episode, we discussed FOPO, which is the topic of his most recent book, The First Rule of Mastery. FOPO stands for Fear of Other People's Opinions, and Michael argues it's one of the biggest inhibitors of human potential. We discussed the on-ramps to FOPO, such as a poor sense of self and a performance-based identity. We also discussed the off-ramps to FOPO, such as the importance of grounding your actions in authenticity and integrity, and cultivating an inner sense of self-worth and competence. This was such a fun chat, as it always is with Michael, and I think you'll really learn something you can apply in your own life. To stop thinking so much about what other people are thinking about you, and care about what you actually think about yourself, and really developing a strong sense of self. So, without further ado, I bring you Michael Gervais. Michael Gervais, it's so good to talk to you today.
I'm stoked to be here with you.
In person.
I know.
Live and in person.
Yeah, you look great, man.
Thank you. So do you, as always.
I appreciate the way that you show up in the world, the way that you show up in my life, the way that you show up in my consciousness.
Thank you.
Like, I really appreciate you. And so I'm honored to be here.
Likewise, and I love how heartfelt you are.
Yeah.
But this is turning into a love fest already. So maybe I should ask a technical question quick before it gets awkward. No,
Yeah.
No, I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Loved your new book. It's really, it hit. It's I think a lot of people reading it will really feel a personal connection to this idea of FOPO. But let me just start off and ask, okay, what does FOPO stand for?
Fear of people's opinions.
Okay.
I knew it's a little play on FOMO,
yeah,
right? Like
of course.
it's fun, and the origin of it is fundamentally different, but related to FOMO. But fear of people's opinions, I think, is one of the great constrictors of one's potential.
Yeah, well, I wrote a quote there that you said our fear of people's opinions, FOPO, is a hidden epidemic and may be the single greatest constrictor of human potential. I pulled that out because, wow, what a quote that, I'm all into human potential.
100%,
It's like my
yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of my thing. And that quote really stood out to me. So fear of people's opinions, is that just simply what it sounds like? You know?
I don't think it's more complicated than
It's
that.
not anxiety, it's fear. Like, you chose those words carefully. Like,
That's right.
Fear is a strong word, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we do seem to have a great fear for things that it's ridiculous that we're fearful over, like talking, like social anxiety. I don't think it's social fear for a lot of these people. It's not just anxiety, right? There's a fear there.
Yeah, so the reason I work from the fear base, so anxiety for me is an excessive worry, and so there's a problematic note to the word anxiety, right? It's maladaptive.
Yeah.
Fear is adaptive. There's a reason that we should have and need to have fears. And the fear that I'm pointing to here is a fear that doesn't get enough attention. We're afraid of, people holding guns. That's probably a good thing, right? When they're pointed at us.
I don't want them to be holding guns.
Right, yeah. We ought to be afraid when we're standing next to heights. We ought to be afraid when there's heat in the environment, there's a flame. There's things that we're supposed to be afraid of.
We should be, yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that I know this, so I'm speaking just to make sure we're on the same page with these things. And please, I respect your acumen and your science acuity so well. Please poke holes, point at it, let's wrestle it down, let's have fun with.
Wait till we get to the neuroscience chapter.
Yeah, right. Okay, good. Yeah, good. So when a saber-tooth tiger or a grizzly bear or a wildebeest is running towards us, there's supposed to be a fear response. We're not even going to think about it. We're going to mobilize our bodies to be able to fight, flight, freeze, sometimes submit. But what we don't point to enough is that hundreds of thousands of years ago, if we didn't perform well in the tribe, if you and I we're in the same tribe and we're expected to go do something and we come back empty-handed too many times, or we come back and we screw up, or we're a distraction to something. All it took were a couple people and maybe some senior folks in the tribe to look at us a certain way and squint a little bit, have a little bit of disdain and say, Scott, Mike, I think this is about the end of the road here for you. It's time to go. That was a near-death sentence, because now we have to hunt and gather and forge and protect. And, if you've got a couple kids and I got a couple kids and an aunt and maybe an uncle and maybe there's 8 of us, it's a near-death sentence to be able to fend in the wild. So other people's opinions matter.
It just mattered.
Yes.
It like really mattered.
Really mattered. Yeah. And so that's why we're very sensitive to picking up slightest rejection.
Yeah.
Because 100,000 years ago, that was a near-death sentence. Yeah. It's not the same anymore.
No.
Same operating system, different conditions.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, we think back. Well, I was touched by your story of your mentor who said some offhand comment about why are you behind this, on the TV or whatever, and you took it so personally for how many years?
Oh, I mean, over a decade. Yeah.
Isn't it incredible how a comment of one person can we can obsess and just remember it for so many years, and why does it penetrate our soul?
It got
so
in.
much.
That throwaway comment by him, it just got in. And
do you remember his name?
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, of course. Yes. And
I don't know if you repressed his name because it's
no. I didn't put it in the book because it's really I didn't want him to feel a certain way. And yeah. So, but it got in, and the throwaway comment was, I was so excited that I was working with a UFC fighter. This was early days in the UFC, and we practiced everything. As a sports psychologist, we dialed everything in, and he had a great camp. We did really good, honest internal work.
Cool.
And fight night in Vegas, 20,000 people, millions of people watching, and he's walking the 5 steps up to get into the cage. There's 3 coaches, myself, the head coach, and the striking coach, and we were following him as we're told to do, and then stay on the outside of the octagon and kind of meet him at his point. And so we did exactly that. But to do that, we happened to cut in front of the camera. That's where we're supposed to be walking. So my mentor calls me on my drive home and says, just a throwaway comment was yeah, congratulations, but what are you doing in front of the camera? That's not where sports psychs are supposed to be.
Did he say that too?
That's how I took it.
Maybe he just simply meant I noticed that you accidentally,
I took it a whole different way. It was my internal narrative and drama and concern, and actually I kind of liked that I was in the fold of it, and it was exciting, and I'm not supposed to say that out loud, but I did.
I totally get it.
I liked it, and I felt part of something that was big and special, and it was not about me, but I liked that I was part of it.
Yeah. And
then just this dig right in the a knife right in the liver. And I was I didn't know what to do with it. And so I metabolized it, and I was a good practitioner, and I just kind of folded back into, the recesses, which is cool, no problem. I knew my place. But I don't think I did an honest service to what I wanted to do, which is celebrate this beautiful science that we both love. Put it on Front Street, talk about the power of psychology and point to the strong humans that are doing the vulnerable, risk-taking internal work to go to the frontier. We have to celebrate that work.
Amen.
And so I pulled back. And so that was about a decade.
Knowing what you know now, and let's say that happened again, that you took a time machine, you went back there, and you had already written this book, you had the mind of you today.
Right.
How would you respond differently to that? Would it just bounce off you?
I don't think, okay, be clear. The subtitle is Stop Worrying About What People Think. It's not Stop Caring. So
Nice.
right. So
Nice.
I do deeply care about the people who care. So the people that are on the inner circle that I know we've spent enough time under tension that I know they care.
Yeah.
I care too.
Yeah.
And so the worrying. So if back in time, so he says that comment. What I would like to hope I do is that I'm more available to see it.
Yeah.
So I know the water I'm swimming in.
Yes.
That other people's opinions really matter. So I'd see the water, I'd see that ripple just a little bit easier. And then it wouldn't be like nonchalantly bouncing off, but I would see him as opposed to just like feeling that it's my thing. So I feel like that's my hope would be I'd see him.
Yeah, it was
in the comment.
Yeah, and I think it was just really interesting. You said you saw him later on in life, and he looked really frail, and you kind of just saw him in a different way.
Yeah, I saw him in a different way.
Something similar happened to me too with this school psychologist when I was 10 years old or 17 years old, who said, you know, you're not smart enough to be in gifted education, and drew a bell curve on a napkin for me and kind of pointed out where I was. But I saw him years later, like only a couple years ago, in the park, and he was very old and frail, and there was a certain sort of humanity there where I was like, oh, I didn't even feel the need to bring it up. You know, I talked to him, and I noticed you didn't even feel the need to bring it up at that moment.
I didn't.
There's something about that. I experienced that too with someone similar in my life.
No way.
Yeah.
So wait, you had a moment. I know some of this, your origin story, right? I know some of this part, but you're mapping the FOPO. So the book triggered that for you?
Triggered many things. That's one thing.
but one of them is that you had that initial insult.
So that fear of, I thought I was stupid.
It changed you in some way.
Yeah.
I metabolized it. Like I took it in. I swallowed it. And then when you saw that person, you had compassion. You didn't feel the need to fight or to defend.
He looked very old and frail, and I think that, you know, now as an adult, I could be like, oh, he probably meant well. I don't think he was pernicious. But at the time, it actually fueled me. It fired me up to become who I am today. So I wonder to what extent can our fear of people's opinions actually, can it be a motivating force to like disprove people wrong?
Yeah,
or
I think
prove
so.
people wrong.
Maybe even both, right? But I think the answer is clearly yes. And so can OCD and anxiety and narcissism and so all of
the
those
things I have.
Yeah.
Just go down the list, Michael.
Sociopathology? No,
I don't think I'm on that one.
Okay, you're not torturing little dogs
not
as a
that,
kid.
Not
you didn't
that.
do that. No. But all of those traditionally considered maladaptive responses to wellness and well-being, put in the right context in certain environments, can fuel us to be maybe the best in the world. Maybe our very best, but not necessarily joy and happy and flourishing. So, yes, chip on your shoulder might get you really good. Enough anxiety might get you to work hard, but it doesn't allow you to get there, right? Wherever there is for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not sustainable in the long run to be fueled by that emotion. But it can be a nice launching pad.
I know it too.
It launched me to like prove everyone wrong and like, you know, be like, I'm going to play the Carnegie Mellon and screw you all, you know, and
that's it.
Yeah.
Would you trade it, that approach that you?
No, I think it's what made me.
Yeah, me too.
In a way.
Yeah.
No, not in a way. It did.
Yeah, that's right.
It's part of me. It's part of my history. Well, who am I outside of my genes and my history, right?
The way you interpret your experiences.
Well, that's true. That's true too.
That part.
I forgot about that.
Oh, God.
But how we interpret our experience is a result of our genes and our experience.
I think that's fair.
There's nothing outside. You know, we can get into the topic of free will because I was reading your book. Like you have this section, like you're like, what's 100% within your control? You know, and I'm like, is anything 100% within your control though?
I think so.
It sounds like you do.
Yeah. So I just had Sapolsky on.
Oh, I bet he didn't agree with that though.
Oh my God. So his book Determinism, is like flat. He's like, look, you're living in a fantasy land.
Right. Yeah.
He goes, you probably believe in Easter Bunny and he was like he's on it. And he was
I know what
great.
he would say. Yeah.
Yeah, he was great and he was smart and he was wonderful and he still wrestles with it too. Yeah. So he slips into the free will narrative.
He slips, yeah.
Yeah, and I slip into FOPO and like so, like we're studying the things that we need to study for a reason.
But you do think we can distinguish between things that we don't have control over and things we do have control over?
Yeah, I mean, I think that volitional control is a real thing. And once we become aware of the thoughts that are impacting our emotions, or once we become aware of the triggers that impact thoughts and emotion, I think we have the available skills to build to work with those potential micro choices. But when you're numb, when you are working like below the surface, it's all kind of, in football we call it bang bang plays. Like it happens so fast that you didn't really have a chance to respond. Is it bang bang? And so that's when you're kind of asleep to what's actually happening inside of you. But once you work on awareness and you honestly invest in the study of yourself, whether that's through a meditation practice, conversations with people of wisdom like you, journaling, those are the big three for me. Those are the ways that we can practice studying self. And with that, I think we do have micro choices.
Yeah, those things do help for sure.
So where are you on the side of free will determinism?
Where do those choices come from? See, ultimately, there's nothing outside of our biology or environment. I don't believe in a magical sauce that gives us a will that's independent of the laws of nature. So someone could ask, well, what are those things? Where does that come from, those choices? But I do believe that the things you just described are free will, is a free will worth wanting, and I have a broader definition of free will than Sapolsky, one that I think you would like.
Yeah, right.
More.
Yeah, and I understand. I've been conditioned by the world I live in, philosophically and
That's
otherwise, and so at some level, I'm attracted to the deterministic approach. There's something that is really interesting about trying to solve that rubric, but I don't want it.
William James said, my first act of free will will be to not believe in free will. Or no, try that again. William James once said, my first act of free will will be to believe in free will. Yes.
That's right. Yeah.
So it sounds like, that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're saying fuck you.
Yeah.
Deterministic world.
I think it's interesting. Yeah. It's like a really interesting puzzle to try to solve. It's bigger than anybody can solve right now because we don't, according to Sapolsky's approach, if we could determine everything or characterize and quantify and calculate all the things that have uniquely happened to you, of course, Mike, you're going to pick this jasmine tea. Of course you're going to pick it.
Right.
Because there's no other real option. You just think there is.
Yeah, and you just reminded me that I have tea here, so I wouldn't have been able to do that if you didn't remind me. So it's not like I made the choice to remember to have the tea.
No, so
everything is prompted by, and if you go farther back in the causal chain, that's Sapolsky's point.
That's his point.
And I think he's right with what he's saying, but he's leaving out a lot of emergent humanness.
That's right. Yeah,
like qualia.
I'm gonna.
Is this peppermint?
No, this is not peppermint. This is a blue butterfly tea.
I was wondering because it looks blue.
Yeah, it's a blue butterfly.
I'm like, are you poisoning me?
They did not have peppermint or mint for you, but this is a really interesting non-caffeinated blue butterfly.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
That's one of my. I love boutique tea.
Actually, that's really good.
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah, I'm down.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Sorry, we were about to say something.
No, I'm just if there's an interactionist approach, I would check the box there. Yeah. Right? Like an interaction between free will and, of course, the determinants for behavior.
Yeah, but there's something unique about humans that you don't see in other animals. The human consciousness can give us all sorts of possibilities and possible futures, But maybe we should go back to FOPO. I think we have a whole conversation about free will.
Listen,
yeah, I know you love this.
Yeah, I'm following your lead, and I've been really excited to have this conversation.
Me too.
Yeah.
Oh my God, for a while. I'm glad we finally got a chance to do it. I want to get into the mechanics of FOPO a little bit. I love this cycle, this loop, loop as you put it.
Yeah.
You have this anticipation phase, then the checking phase, then the response phase. Do you mind going through each of those three and just explaining what they are?
Yeah, and I hope as I describe these, some of the academics in your world and researchers might want to collaborate on to actually test this, right? Because this is all theoretical at this point. And so anticipation phase is all of the machinations that take place prior to a engagement with another person. So this is like, this is the bulk of the time spent in FOPO. It's the internal wondering what somebody later might be thinking.
Yeah.
So for example, you're going to go to a holiday party and you go into your closet and you say, what am I going to wear? What do I think other people are going to wear? And who's going to be there? Well, Susie's going to be there. And man, I've been wanting to talk to Susie for a while. Do you think she would like this or that? So it's that type of like very subtle trying to anticipate favor or approval from another person and or avoiding rejection. So FOPO is all about acceptance and rejection management.
Nice.
So that's the anticipation phase. And then the second phase is once you're actually in front of a person. And again, this is marked by a fear or a worry. Okay? Non-clinical.
Yeah.
So we haven't risen to the level of like there's a DSM code to
It
it.
can feel clinical sometimes, though.
It can feel clinical.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, it can be if it is one of the great constrictors of people's potential. This might be the beginnings of something that makes it later one day into like, but we're just at the beginnings of it. So the second phase is the checking phase. So you and I are together, and there is a very specific mechanism that I am doing. I'm not immune to this. I'm not a sociopath. I'm not fully enlightened. I'm not the narcissist. So I'm checking because I value you and I value the social harmony that we would have. But I'm checking to see if I'm okay. Are we okay? Is this okay? But I'm not doing it. So this is where I've come a long way. I'm not checking right now at the abandonment of myself. So I'm not going to contour or confront or conform to just so that you'll favor me.
Smart.
Right? Smart. But before, that's what I found myself doing. I would abandon much of myself. Nobody knew it. Nobody would know it, but I know. So there's this checking. It's constantly checking micro expressions. It's trying to make sense. Are we good? Am I okay? Are we okay? And so then that's the checking phase. And it's expensive to be in that type of relationship. It's expensive as a human organism to be in that anticipation phase. And then the third phase is the responding phase. So now, at the slightest hint of potential rejection, so I see your frontalis muscles tighten up, there's a slight little frown, you cock your head just a little bit, and you lower your chin just a bit, and you look at me in this way like, what did you just say? And so I know you didn't just do that, but I'm picking up as much as I possibly can. And then in that response, I either fully contort. Okay, so that's a big one, right?
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
No, but maybe I just shape-shift a little bit. I call that conforming. Contort, conform. Maybe I'll confront you. Hey, did I say something?
Right.
What just happened? Like, oh, you didn't disagree, huh?
Oh.
Okay, so it could be confront like that, or it could be confront like, wait, did I miss something? Now I'm giving myself a second chance to try to navigate that for approval.
So you're a scanner.
Yeah, no. So that's the checking phase.
Yeah. But the people who are scanners, they are so attuned to the slightest changes, and
That's right. And so we can also call them high EQ, high social intelligence.
That's a more positive.
That's more positive.
Because
on
scanning is a term used with borderline personality
That's
disorder.
right. That's right. And that's used for manipulation. That's used for like secondary gain. And so contort, conform, confront. This is kind of fun, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's great.
Yeah, and then the other one is critique.
Okay.
And so what we do at critique is like, say I think that there's it's going a little sideways. I might say, hey, what do you think about Roger? Now I'm going to critique Roger to pair bond with you at Roger's expense. So the critique mechanism is a way to pair bond and to actually at the cost of somebody else. Sometimes I'll critique you. So if I critique you and my vengeance is attacking you, you're no longer like critiquing me.
What a great point.
Okay? And then the last is like, if this is too much and I'm exhausted by this checking and I don't like how I'm responding around you, I'll just disconnect. I'll just pull away from the relationship, and I'm not going to confront. I'm not going to do any of these things. Like, I'm just too overwhelmed because I don't feel like this is like the borderline, back to the borderline. I'm going to disconnect before you ever have a chance
I'll reject
to.
it before you reject me.
Yeah, right. And so that's a little bit of a nod to those two.
Because in a lot of ways, borderline is an extreme version of FOPO.
Yeah, I think same with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like there's such an original insult somewhere that you're not good enough.
Yeah.
And then we create these maladaptive but survival approaches to life. Call it personality,
true.
but like,
I believe reality alignment is what it's all about. You know,
what does that mean to you?
well, so in certain instances, I may not be enough, and just admitting that to myself. You know, the thing is, why do I always have to defend my ego like some fort at all times? That doesn't seem healthy. I'm working on a new book right now, and which I won't talk about the topic, but I have a section in there with the title, Are You an Imposter? Because with imposter syndrome, no one ever actually like entertains the fact, well, actually, you might be an imposter.
That's right.
You might be feeling imposter syndrome because you're a fucking imposter.
That's right. Yeah.
Like every book you read on this is like trying to make people feel good. You know, like, oh, well, you know, don't listen to haters, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, you know what? You start med school, right? Like, you're an imposter. You're not a like 20-year veteran yet. Have humility. Yeah, and that's good. And that can be adaptive. Do you see what I'm saying?
1,000%. Like, so imposter syndrome, the way I relate it from a sport and performance psychology standpoint is if you want to ski a line in the backcountry that maybe has never been done before, or you haven't skied it the way you want to ski it with the speed you want to ski it, you don't know. You don't know what you're going to feel like. So you've got to conjure up this ability that I'm going to do something I've never been done that's been done before, either by me or anyone else.
Perfect.
And so there isn't getting over your skis approach to imposter syndrome, but that is where growth happens. That's where adaptation takes place.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
yes, thank you.
So that's the idea.
Yeah,
like,
you still
embrace
act. You still move. You can feel imposter syndrome, but still move forward.
Oh, 100%.
And that's but both things can be true at the same time. You don't always have to get rid of the feelings of, like.
Oh, cool.
That's a thing that I think
Cool.
I criticize with a lot of the advice if you feel imposter syndrome is like everything these days in self-help seems to be like get rid of the uncomfortable emotion, like.
No, stay in it longer. It's not gonna stay in it longer.
And I think this relates to what you're talking about. And you said the difference between caring and fearing, really relevant to this discussion, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're human, right? And you're not a psychopath, so you can be like, okay, that stung, what that person just said, or the way I'm interpreting it stung. But then you can get curious about it. You can do all the things, but still be with that feeling. Mm-hmm. And I love that approach.
And the thing that I want to just double click on is that it is a fun little exercise. It's nothing novel, but like, whose opinions do you want to care about?
That's a really good question.
And I just did the round table. You know, I live in a city that is kind of attuned to this, but like Redondo, you know, the round. And so like, who's on your round table?
What?
And I don't want a huge round table.
No, me neither.
Yeah. And so yeah, you can extend it like people that are in the room, but not on the round table, but like tune to the round table. And if you invited people as guests in the room, that's cool, but it's not a big room now. So if somebody says something to me like, Mike, I don't know why you wear blue and black so much. Those are the colors I like much. And I don't know that person.
It's like this tea.
It is, yeah, that's a vibrant
whatever
one,
the fuck this is.
Butterfly
I'm trusting you to drink this.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, it's just the butterfly bee stinging tea. I'm like, oh, okay, Michael.
Yeah. Let's see how well you're thinking here in 20 minutes.
Sounds good. Yeah, exactly.
Right, yeah. So like, but if somebody really close that I know cares and has an awareness about color and and they kind of talk to me, I'm like, oh, okay, tell me more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways.
I love it.
Yeah, cool, man.
I think we're aligned there for sure. What are some on-ramps to FOPO? And then I also want to know what are the off-ramps. Let's definitely get to the off-ramps.
Yeah.
But what are some on-ramps?
Well, one on-ramp, like I think the big on-ramp is performance-based identity. So we live in a performance-obsessed culture, certainly in the West.
We do.
You know, and so it makes perfect sense. If that's the culture, that's the water we're swimming in, that the emergence of a performance-based identity makes perfect sense. Okay? And so a performance-based identity is, my identity is wrapped in primarily how well I do what I do relative to other people. So it's very different than a off-ramp purpose-based identity. So the on-ramp to FOPO is how I am what I do relative to how well I do it to other people. So then when I go do the thing that I love doing or that I'm quote unquote good at or I've identified with, my entire identity is at stake. And typically what is the holder of power in those environments are the observers. Okay, so let's say that public speaking, one of the great fears for so many people, in most public setting, whether public speaking is taking place, there's not a sniper in the first balcony row. There is not somebody with a, some sort of handgun in the first, that when you make a mistake, game over. It's more of a death of identity.
Oh, performance-based identity. Oh,
yes,
I see, yeah.
right? Because you're going up on stage to perform, and your identity is commingled with your performance abilities. And if you stutter, if you miscue, if you're off base on your logic, if, the most dangerous thing in those environments are the eyeballs of other people. So the on-ramp to great care about people's opinions is when you have a performance-based identity. And
so true.
I think detangling that is a bit trickier than it sounds. But I would say that just take a look. Like, is your identity wrapped into what you do and how well you do it? And if you go, yeah, it kind of is, and say, okay, I'm not going to say detangle that. I'm going to say, let's see if we can override it. Let's see if we can saturate it with something bigger and more powerful. You say, what is that? This is the off-ramp. Develop a purpose-based identity.
Yeah.
So if you think about every one of your historic heroes, anyone, you fill in the blanks from Mother Teresa to Gandhi to
Michael Gervais.
Oh yeah, how about it? Yes, well, I couldn't hear you. So you go to all of the greats.
Yeah.
They are purpose-based.
Yeah.
Right?
They are. It's such a good point. I've been trying to think in my head how I overcame my fear of speaking, because that was a real serious issue for me when I first started out in 2013. My
Now
first
look at
book
you.
came out.
Now look at Professor
I don't know about
Kaufman.
that, Eric.
Come on, are you kidding me? So it was a real thing for you?
Yes. So when I started out, it was a huge source of anxiety. But what I've done the last 10 years to really help me overcome this is that part of when people think of SBK or Scott Barry Kaufman, they think, oh, he's a little weird. He's a little awkward. And I just own that part of me now. And so I'm not nervous on stage because does that make sense? So not purpose as much as authenticity.
That's authenticity. Yeah,
purpose and authenticity.
Well, I would want to know what your purpose is, because you can. So authenticity is awesome. There's freedom in that. And then what do you do with that freedom? Where are you pointing? And if you can point to something that is bigger than you, it matters to you, it's good for fill in the blanks, and you're really about it. Like you're honestly
Passionate.
really about it. The authenticity just kind of happens.
That's true.
Right? Because it's more like you are working to find the right words to string together.
Exactly.
And you care so much about the inspiration of moving people towards maybe enrolling them in it or understanding what the purpose is. So you become more narrow in focus to the task, rather than like, am I okay in the eyes of others? That just fades away. And that is authenticity. How about it?
No, I think that's spot on. You just stop thinking about yourself when you're focused on, your excitement to share something with someone else.
Yeah. Did you pick up in the book, I don't know if I was demonstrative enough about this, but my aversion to the self industry.
Yeah.
Did that come through for you?
That did come through.
Yeah.
That did come through. You said so much that I think I have a quote here. You said, like so much of the self-help industry is obsessed with the self. Yeah. Why does the self-help industry fuel the obsession with self? Yeah. It's like, you're really wondering that. And I think it's such a good point. I wrote an article once. I was like, you never go to the bookstore and see the other help section.
Oh my God, that's great. Yeah, that is great.
Like you're so all about self-help, and it's perplexing considering we know how good it feels to help others, and how not good it feels to be so obsessed with yourself.
Yeah, and if I get that we got to put our life vest on first, and that's where probably the benevolent approach to self-help started. But man, if we keep just navel gazing, if we keep focusing on being better for the sake of being better, like it's nauseating. So I'm down with like we're more like a coral reef.
Yeah.
You know, and be a contributing member of a beautiful, flourishing coral reef. And our coral reef right now is pretty poor.
That's a whole other topic.
It's a different topic. Yeah, but like
you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
But what are off ramps? What if you're like, okay, I want to get off the FOPO train?
Yeah. Well, I think purpose-based. I think it's a big one.
Okay.
Yeah, I think purpose-based identity is if you got really clear about your purpose.
Cool.
And that's not an easy bit of work to do.
But it's worth it. It's like it's the kind of work that's hard, but it's worth
100%
doing.
And if you say, okay, man, I've been thinking about this for a long time. I don't know, where do I start? Start with like, what is your purpose for today?
Yeah.
Okay, what is your purpose for this week?
Yeah.
What is your purpose for this holiday season? What is your purpose for like 2024? Like, so you can thin slice it to practice it for a while. And then over time, you're practicing this idea of purpose. And underneath the current, if you're having conversations about big life purpose with people that you respect, or you're writing about it, or you're reading about it, and you carve out enough disciplined time, or time where you can be disciplined with like thinking about the time that you're here, what the hell are you doing with it? And so like, it's not that it's unavailable. It just is a muscle that we don't practice properly because we're spoon-fed so much. We've been shoveled, this performance-based identity that we haven't blossomed or hydrated or metabolized any of the purpose-based stuff. So it's good work. Yeah. It's good, honest work.
Yeah, it is.
I want to know more about you, why you said this hits for you.
Oh my God. I don't want to turn this into a psychotherapy session.
No, two guys.
I mean, there's just been a lot of instances in my life, like, because I'm a highly sensitive person. So I think these things hit more for HSPs. That's a thing. 15% of the population, Michael, are HSPs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It sounds silly.
No, it doesn't. Yeah.
But HSPs, just you feel things more deeply. You just feel everything, So like I having to just over the course of my life not take everything so personally and so deeply has been a journey for me. And I think I've come a long way. Maybe I've overcorrected where now I don't give a fuck about anyone. No, I'm joking. But
you need a round table.
Yeah.
Okay. Right? Yeah. Let's get you a round table for a different reason.
Overcorrected a little too much. And
yeah.
I really don't. I mean, I'm joking, but I am at the point where I like don't really take things personally anymore. I really like always trying to, think, oh, well, what is true in that? What's not true in that?
Yeah.
Where's it coming from? What's the intentionality, et cetera? But not in my 20s, oh boy, especially approaching women. And that's the thing, we don't need to go into great detail about. But in my 20s, I think a lot of young men have a fear of approaching women. I should coin what is that?
What would that
be? FOW, fear of approaching women.
Fear of women's opinion.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Or FOAW or FOWO.
I can't be the only 22-year-old that had a fear of women's opinions, right?
Like,
that must be a common thing among young men. But, how do you deal with that? How do you develop an inner sense of self-esteem? That's not so dependent on whether or not you get rejected or accepted, And I'm sure there's plenty of women that also have a fear of being rejected too from men. It's a very common human experience. But that was a big one for me in my 20s.
So you had a phase where FOPO, fear of, it happened to be a woman, but fear of the other's opinion of you was...
in a romantic context, being rejected. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It is intimate.
Yeah, because you're putting yourself out there.
Which is required.
And you have to do it.
You have,
yeah.
And it's dangerous.
Yeah. Well, my mom says, Scott, you're never going to find someone if you don't leave your room.
Oh my God! Yeah, you really went there, didn't you? Yeah.
We've may edit that out.
No, that's perfect.
We may edit that out.
Oh God. Yeah. So that idea is the intimacy of bringing yourself forward.
Yes.
And then if you're callous and you don't care, like then you don't bring the sensitivity into the relationship.
You actually increase the chances they'll be attracted to you if you bring us attitude.
Well, that's a different kind
Isn't
of
that interesting though? The bad boy, there's something to the bad boy.
Well, yeah, because you know what? The bad boy might protect me because he didn't care. Like he might step in front of a bully. He might tell the other, predator over there like to back up. Like
I'm a bad boy now.
Are you?
That's
though?
part of my journey.
Are you? Are you really? I don't see your neck tattoo. Is that coming?
That's hidden.
It's hidden. Yeah, right. I'm a hidden bad boy.
In my skin.
Yeah, I'm a hidden bad boy. Yeah, cool.
No, but so I think that's a big one for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
That, it's a big part of the FOPO journey for people who's within the romantic domain.
Yeah.
And then so the off ramp there is what? Like if we just double click on that domain, let's say you're approaching someone. Let's say it's someone that you've been friends with a while, and you are like, hey, I'm actually catching feelings for you or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That was maybe not a smooth way of putting it, but whatever.
Oh, is that what the cool kids
whatever
say
you
nowadays?
say, whatever you say,
feelings?
yeah, whatever the smoothest way of saying that is. And then the person's like, "No, I'm good." How do you, off ramp your FOPO in that situation?
Oh, I think you back yourself. So in sport, we've got what's really interesting in elite sport is you've got sometimes the ratio is 1-to-1, one coach per athlete, or it's small groups. One coach for 4 athletes. So in the real world, we don't have that ratio at work, right? We don't have like a coach that's supporting and challenging us and seeing us and knowing us and like holding us accountable and understanding what we need to get better at, say socially or tactically in business or email writing. Like we don't have it. So we're kind of on our own. But what great coaches do is they see the person, they understand what they're trying to work on, they co-create an idea of what could be if we really did some really great work together. So that's using imagination for a better future.
I love that, yeah.
And then we make that image so clear that we could almost feel the fabric of it. We nod our head and we commit to each other. So the coach and the athlete commit to each other to go on that adventure. And if we make it bold enough, it's like, do you think though? Yeah, I think, and you know what? Let's do it in the right way together. That's like, how are we going to coach each other? How are we going to be in this thing? And then the athlete will say, I don't know, man, give it to me straight. And he goes, straight? Are you sure straight? Okay, well, maybe not publicly, so that you start to calibrate the way that you want that relationship with coach and athlete. Okay, so there's a calibration there on how to be coached. My point is, we become sophisticated in the way that the coach speaks to the athlete. So that's coach speak. And then if you take that for just a moment, because we don't have that in our daily lives, and we replace it with self-coaching.
Yeah, that is what I'm talking about.
Right? Okay, when I say back yourself, a great coach will say, keep going.
Yeah.
I know you just dropped it. Keep going. Put your hands here. Like, keep going. You got this.
Yeah.
Like, get back out there. There's no time right now to come on now. We'll process this thing later. Okay? So back yourself like a great coach would back you. Yeah. Like the greatest coach you can imagine. Most coaches are so kind and they are so connected to support that they really want to see you be great. Yes. And they've dedicated their life to it.
100%.
The ones that go sideways, they're in it for themselves. Yeah. Okay? And we know who they are. You can feel it. Like this person's in it more for themselves than me.
Yeah.
Okay. So be a great coach to yourself. That's an
personal
offer.
Trainers like that.
Yeah.
I feel like it's more about them.
That's right.
Beating me up.
Yeah. And it's about the way they look.
Yeah.
And then the way they're perceived. And like, as a bad coach now.
I love the self-coach idea. As you know, I'm starting a form of coaching called self-actualization coaching, but there's no reason why we can't be our own self-actualization coaches.
100%.
And I had Dick Schwartz on my podcast recently, who's founder of Internal Family Systems Therapy, and he actually did therapy on the spot about this topic of fear of, women.
On you,
yeah, he
with
did
you, family systems?
A 15-minute psychotherapy session with Dick Schwartz.
I gotta tune in.
Cool.
That's a cool
it'll
moment.
come out soon.
Yeah.
And he, it was really, it was really emotional. I was getting really emotional because I was tracing it back to this time I was rejected in summer camp at age 10. There's a lot there, right?
Nice for you. Yeah.
And he really helped me find another part of myself that's going to be that inner coach for me. And so it just so relates to what you're just saying.
Oh, that's great.
He's like, who is, this other guy that takes that and kind of like says, just brush it off, bro. Keep going. Who's that friend? Can you have that friend inside you, in your ear? And I just thought it was really transformational.
And can you, so there's like, if we're not sophisticated here, we think that coaching ourselves can come from a voice of like critique and judgment. Yeah. That's not good enough.
Right.
What are you gonna do? You gonna sit here, or you gonna get a? It doesn't have to be anything close to that.
It could actually be supportive.
Yeah, go find that. So this is what I do with athletes all the time. Like, can you point to a coach that you had in your life that was amazing? Yeah. What was that like? How did they speak to you? How did you feel around them? I felt like I could do anything. I felt like really it was all available to me. I just needed to grab it and do the work, and like I could make mistakes, and they were still there. They're still in it with me. They're not embarrassed. Like they have my back. And so like go find those coaches, and if you haven't had one, create one. You can be that for other people. Yeah. You can be it for yourself. And so just index 2, 3, 4, 5 values that matter. So start 100%. With 3 values: kindness, accuracy, excellence. How about maybe, okay? And then every word you choose, you line up with kindness, accuracy, excellence. I just made those 3 up. It could be any virtue or values that matter to you. And then, so that's where the inner world, investing in your inner world is really dynamic, is that I believe free will. So you can choose the words that you're going to say to yourself or others. You can choose your thoughts, your words, and your actions. And if you line them up, like you've got bellwethers of values, you only need a couple of them.
Yeah.
And then you practice thoughts, words, and actions that are in context of the values that matter most to you, that are pointing at the purpose.
Yeah.
Now we got it.
Yeah.
This is not that complicated.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to get those bellwethers, those values lined up, to practice with great awareness your thoughts, words, and actions that are pointing towards that purpose.
It sure does, especially if your sociometer is woefully miscalibrated. The sociometer theory, I love that you drew in that. Huge shout out to Mark Leary.
This was your inspiration. It's in the book because of our friendship, and you said, hey, there's a thing here. I know what you're writing about, and there's a thing here. Check out Mark Leary's work, and appreciate you, appreciate Mark.
I really appreciate a lot of appreciation here.
Right, yeah.
Appreciate this weird ass tea. It's gonna be my new favorite go-to tea now.
It's a good tea,
especially with guests. My podcast. I'm like, would you like some dragonfly tea?
And you know what's fun about this tea is that if you put some citrus in it, it turns a whole different color.
So you've had this before?
Oh, it's a go-to. Like I said, I love hand-picked tea leaves, and so this is one of them.
Yeah, I feel like this tea is a kind of thread throughout a lot of this. Wonderful. Do we talk about neuroscience at all, or do we grab a beer some other day and talk about neuroscience?
I'll follow your lead. We're give me a grade. I traveled in your territory here. I kept it pretty thin because I didn't want to unravel too much.
Did you run it by Mary Helen and Merdino Yang?
Yeah.
And she approved it?
Yeah. She's okay. Oh, so you defer to Mary Helen.
I often do because she's a real expert in the social cognitive neuroscience field. What I like about her research is that she shows the benefits of the default mode network, right? Mm-hmm. So without the default mode network, we would have a hard time having compassion for others. We would not be able to project ourselves into the mind of someone else, and as you make the point, we are bad perspective takers, but the default mode, without the default mode network, we'd be even worse. We wouldn't be able to imagine, what someone else is
I've heard
thinking.
some smart people call it the Imagination
The
Network.
Imagination Network. Yes.
Professor Kaufman.
But I think yes. But I think that you're quite right to point out that it can be the source of our greatest suffering when we get too stuck in our self story.
Right.
There's a lot there that's relevant to what you write about in your book. You write about interpretation is almost everything. Like you decided to interpret that mentor's throwaway comment in a certain way that caused you a lot of darn suffering for many years. So it can be that brain network can be the source of our greatest suffering. I would also argue it can be the source of our greatest creativity, our greatest compassion. Improv. They look at rappers and improv artists and poets in the fMRI machine, and their default mode network is just lighting up because they are really in touch with their self in a flow kind of state where their executive attention network is quieter. So I think it's the interaction between the default and the executive that matters, not one or the other.
Right. Yeah. Very cool.
Yes, but you're quite right to point out it can be such a great source of suffering when we get stuck in those self narratives.
I didn't tie this together well enough because so many darlings in this book were cut out. Like that idea.
I bet you had to kill darlings too. Did you have a bigger first draft?
I'll tell you a fun one that got cut.
I love to hear these.
But spotlight effect and default mode network.
Oh,
so I think there's a connection there that I haven't read.
A whole chapter on spotlight.
Yeah, and that spotlight effect is a great bit of research, for folks that are unfamiliar. But essentially, it's like there's a finding that we walk around thinking that we're under the spotlight, and the connection, like, what is he thinking of me, is basically the spotlight effect. What is he thinking of the shirt I'm wearing or whatever? And you're actually under your own spotlight. What is Mike thinking of me? And so, like, we're walking around with these spotlights on us thinking that we're the center of the universe, the center of attention. And if we take that one step forward and we get stuck in the default mode network, like, how am I? We need to know how I am. But this internal focus only, that's where it becomes, as soon as like I can feel my sympathetic nervous system kick on, and as soon as I feel like there's some sort of social threat where I might not be good enough, and I'm in this hypersensitive self mode, I get stuck in the default mode type of feeling.
It's not a great feeling.
No, and it's a loop, and it doesn't matter. Like, I feel like it's really hard to get out of it.
It happens to you too?
Oh, yeah.
Even nowadays?
Yeah, I mean, much less than it did before.
Yeah.
But I'm not immune from it. But if I preempt purpose, I preempt gratitude training, I preempt curiosity, and I practice those types of things. I preempt with mindfulness to be more aware, so I can catch and work with my thoughts upstream rather than downstream in the rapids. Those are all off ramps. Okay, so if I can work those things, just like when I go to the gym and I want to do mobility work and some strength work, and same thing.
Yeah.
So I have to work for those.
Yeah.
I wasn't born like free. So, and that's why it's mental training.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
That's a phrase you use in your course with coach.
Yes, 100%.
Let's talk about death. When we face our mortality head on, can that reduce FOPO?
Possibly. It does for me. And this idea has been around a long time, right? This is a Stoic idea. It's just been around a long time, like square up with your death. Be honest with yourself. There's one of the kind of the core foundational ideas in Buddhism, and certainly the Zen traditions, is like everything is impermanent. Impermanence is like one of the foundational things. So everything is changing all the time, and we don't know when that time runs out.
You had this quote from Jeff Bezos, right? Where he's like, in 20, 30 years, we could totally go bankrupt.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. So, some of the multinational companies I work with, they $3 trillion cap, and they still feel like they're about to go out of business. So that's a different fear, though. That the idea of squaring up with the impermanence of all things.
It's the death of a company, though.
It's the death of a company. But what I'm suggesting in this is that when you embrace the fragility by understanding impermanence and embracing what impermanence really means, that you'll be more likely to be here because here is fleeting and here again is fleeting. And so I don't know when I'll see you again, Scott. I don't know when I'll talk to you again. I don't know when I'll get that moment. And so I want to be, when I'm here, I want to be great. I want to be here with you.
Hell yeah.
And it's a forcing function for me to be all in the places I'm in.
Yeah.
And so I hope that people say, what is success for you? Like if my wife were to hear this, that she'd say, yeah, that's how he is with me too. And my son, that we have an adult relationship when he's older, like, yeah, I feel that way too around you, Mike or Dad. So I think what you're going to point to is that this little practice that I do when I say goodbye to people is that I just take a moment. And now it's now weird that I'm talking about it because you'll feel it now probably at some level. But when I say goodbye to you, I mean it. Yeah. I don't know if I'll see you again. Yeah. And so I practice that every day. Yeah. And then that practice keeps me tuned to the next person that I'm going to see. Like, shit, I don't know if I'm going to see Scott again. That might mean I don't know if I'm going to see Xavier again. Man, let me be here.
I love it.
So it's a small little practice I do.
I love it. Abraham Maslow had these exercises where, when you're with someone, imagine them dead. So,
is that right?
Yeah.
Wait, how does that work?
I mean, he had this whole idea of the plateau experience where you simultaneously see the eternal in every situation.
The eternal.
As well as the impermanence. It's a little complicated. It's related to some Eastern philosophy, but you can realize that we're all just archetypes of something. Like there's going to be 200 years from now a podcast conversation between a Michael lookalike and a Scott lookalike. There'll be two people who take up whatever role we play in society right now. But it's kind of a thing where you just recognize there's an impermanence, but there's also something that lives on, and holding both in your mind at the same time. But also, he did have exercises for recognizing the impermanence of things. And while you're not when you're saying goodbye to them, but while you're talking to them.
See, I knew I was not as good as Maslow. Damn it.
No, why? Yours is good too.
I'm joking. That's a performance-based identity.
Oh, that's performance-based.
Yeah.
Yours is good. I like yours too. Yes, and.
Yeah.
So he had all sorts of exercises for really confronting the mortality of things. Let's talk about social media. I want to be remiss if we didn't bring that up because I feel like there's so much pressure nowadays to appear popular, happy, good. And when you feel that pressure, you are in a sense caring not just caring, but you're fearing negative opinions, right?
Yeah, and you're contorting and shaping and presenting. You're presenting in a certain way, and so the performative aspect of being human has kind of saturated too many factors of being. And so, we call it performance psychology. And there is a time to perform, and there is a time to be. And so can you hold the space of your being, your authenticity, if you will, to use your earlier language, and express from there? That's radical performance.
Huge.
But when you're faking it till you make it, when you're performative in a way that you want favor, then we got some real problems and challenges in how that shows up. So why now? Why this book? Why now? Social media is like gasoline on this thing.
Yeah,
we're living in a performance obsessed culture. We've got this performance based identity. We've got this very specific process in our brain that's scanning for danger. And one of the great threats is rejection. And then you add social media on top of this unexamined internal way of living. And I think this is one of the reasons FOPO, and exactly what I'm talking about, is one of the reasons suicide, anxiety, depression, addiction is on the rise for kids. It's an unexamined approach to those conditions I just talked about.
Oh, it's so true.
Yeah.
Jonathan Haidt's writing a book about this, The Anxious Generation.
Yeah.
About especially like teenagers. It's like there's so much pressure
Mm-hmm.
for this. I mean, I wish I knew when I was a teenager. I wish I could have read your book.
I do too. I wish my parents would have read it. You know, I wish I would have read it. I wish my parents would have read it. I wish my coaches would have read it. I wish my aunts and uncles would have read it. And just, it's like David Foster Wallace is, you know, he's got that classic poem that he says, it's a fish, an old fish swimming in one direction and two young fish swimming in the other direction. And he swims by him and he says, "How's the water, boys?" And the two fish keep swimming along and they don't say anything to each other.
Right.
They don't want to look stupid or whatever it might be. And then finally one of the young fish says to the other young fish, "The hell is water?" So he's just pointing to the obvious that we take for granted.
We take so many things for granted.
Yeah. And so anyways, I think that it's a little bit like that too.
You do talk about, asking yourself, what will you regret at the end of your life? I wrote a cheeky post the other day. All those kind of studies, they tell us what people are regretting on their death. I want to hear from the dude or the human who says, who is just like, he's like, "Nah, I'm good. I don't have any regrets." I want to live like that person.
Yeah, they're out there. I don't know anyone like that though.
Well, isn't it possible to not regret? I mean, it's not saying you don't live a life of pain or you don't live a life of things that you're not happy with, but I think there's something we can learn from all of our situations.
Yeah, the things that I regret most in my life, and I wish I was better for people when I chose words or actions that really hurt them. And so those are the ones that I'm like,
I got you.
Fuck, like what was wrong with me? And so those are the ones that sting. And I completely get, I wouldn't be who I am. I like who I am. I wouldn't be who I am without those pains. But man, when it comes to the cost of other people, that sucks.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that that's the juice is worth the squeeze. Me liking myself, and I've heard a bunch of other people, like that's pretty poor.
But that's a regret for something you did, not a regret for something you didn't do.
That's right.
I don't really like to have too many regrets for things I haven't done. But I don't know. I can probably think about examples of things that
that you did not do.
Yeah.
Like the opportunities that you didn't.
Yeah, opportunities I may not have taken.
Mm-hmm.
But another door was opened. It's the whole free will thing and the regrets thing is interesting because Sapolsky would say, "It's silly to have regrets. You couldn't have chosen otherwise."
Well, you're supposed to have that feeling. Of course you are, because of your unique experiences prior to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course you would, because of your unique genetic experience and all of you, like of course you would be depressed too.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course your unique experience would express anger from that depression. So yes, and I mean I can get in there. Mm-hmm. I feel like that I can get in my own psychology and make some choices.
Yeah. So. I like your take there on choices. At least there's a little wiggle room here.
There is room.
Look, I loved your book. We could talk all day long. I loved all the stories in your book. They're captivating.
Thank you.
Everyone took me down a rabbit hole. I wasn't aware of the as much as I was a Bulls fan as a kid. I don't remember that game where Karl Malone and Scottie Pippen went to Karl Malone. He's like, "The mailman don't deliver on Sundays," and he missed both free throws. And then of course, and I Googled it. I watched the rest of that game and watched Michael Jordan's winning shot. Man, Michael's amazing because nothing phases him.
Amazing.
That's what probably makes him so amazing. Is that he's not phased, right? Like he took that situation. He's like, okay, now I'm gonna win the game, and like.
I don't know Michael Jordan. I think he's complicated. I think that,
as we all are.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of pain in there, and there's been a lot that he has had to work through that is not quite ready for like a joyous life. But
you just don't see or get into. No one ever psychoanalyzes players. They just. It matters how you perform.
Right. For the most part,
Yeah.
but like when I watch him be able to execute on demand, it's special.
It's special. Yeah.
He is special.
There were just two sides of that,
right.
court, the Karl Malone missing the two. Cause like Jordan doesn't do that. They give him more pressure, and he performs better. He's the inverse of that.
Yeah, he's special.
Yeah, but just the point there with the Scottie Pippen going up and really being able to affect him. Obviously, Karl Malone can get affected by that. Although then I started going down a rabbit hole of other alternative explanations for why he missed those free throws. Some people said he had hand burns from that game. Whatever. Anyway, thank you so much for these incredible stories. Everyone got me down a whole rabbit hole.
Oh, fun, man. Thank you. That is so good. I was when I sent it to you, like thinking about the FOPO, look, and I sent it to you, your opinions about kind of the science and the approach, it mattered to me. And I was nervous to send it to you.
Yeah, man. I love the book. I'm going to end on a quote I've been saving for last. You have a choice at every moment of your life whether you are going to play the FOPO game. Are you going to spend your precious days, hours, and moments worrying about other people's opinions? Are you going to spend your brief time on this planet worrying about what other people think you should say or do or feel? Hell no. I'll answer that question. I'll answer it. Hell no. Thank you,
great,
Mike.
brother. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you too.
Yeah, appreciate you.